Are you recording yet?
No,
I didn't think so. I'm like, maybe I missed it with all of these.
not. I have to figure out how to mute me first. Um,
Technology is amazing.
I know, right? What is these?
Welcome to the show where high achieving women ditch this just stress without losing the success. I'm Janessa Finley Ford, coach, healer, and fierce advocate for mastering the art of being human. This is where science meets spirit and ambition becomes alignment. And I don't do it alone, so let's meet the other voice behind the mission.
Hi, I'm SJ. I'm a results-driven leader who leads with conviction and strength, setting an unapologetic standard of excellence. I build high-trust communities where candor and accountability forge dependable leaders. As a certified crystal healer and shamanic earth and energy medicine practitioner, I blend science, spirit, and strategy together to rewire energetic patterns for peace, potency, and purpose.
So, on today's show, the hidden leader in the room, there is a leader in the room that no one has officially hired, but you and everyone else are responding to them. And it's not by title or by strategy or even by your words, it's by pattern. You can say all the right things in a meeting, you can hold the agenda, you can drive the outcome, you can own the room, and still leave people feeling pressure, hesitation, confusion, or distance that can't quite be explained. That's because leadership is not created at the level of your behavior. It's not just simply performing an act or saying certain words. It's actually created at the level of cause. And the cause is almost never what you think it is. So, this month we have been talking about the law of cause and effect, how the unseen drives the seen. That's what we're all about here. And in leadership, the unseen isn't just your mindset, it's your nervous system, it's your body, it's your identity, it's your personality, and the Enneagram patterns that have been organizing your perception long before you ever walked into that room. Because your body is already reacting before your mind actually explains what's running through it. Your tone is already shaped before you choose your words. Your presence is already communicating before you say a thing. We all know this to be true. Someone can walk into the room and you know exactly what mood they're in, and they have not spoken one single word. You're doing the same thing. So while you think you're leading the conversation, your personality type might be actually running the show. The Enneagram 1, tightening the room with unspoken standards, or the 2, overextending to keep connection. The 3 is pushing for results while disconnecting from self. The 4 is bringing depth but losing stability. The 5 is holding insight but withholding their presence. The 6 is always scanning for safety instead of actually just creating it. The 7 is lifting the energy while avoiding what's actually creating the heaviness. And the 8 is driving forward but closing people off. And last but not least, the 9 is keeping peace while disappearing from their impact. And you know what? None of this is wrong. It's causal. It is the cause that shapes the effect. And so we need to examine whether or not the effects that you're getting in your leadership are what you desire, and furthermore, whether you're aware of it or not. So today we're getting real honest, not about how to lead better on the surface, but about what's actually leading you, because your self-leadership drives the leadership that you have of others. And once you see the hidden boss, you get your leadership back. So let's open our eyes. SJ, I'm going to turn it over to you. My throat is super scratchy and my voice is a little raspy. So take it away. Where do you want to jump in with the Enneagram today?
Let's start with why don't we just start with the Enneagram 1? We never start with the 1. Let's just go in order. Let's start
Oh
with the 1. Let's
my
just get crazy.
gosh.
Right? My favorite, the Enneagram 1, some of my favorite humans and how their inner boss can really take over in that moment. Enneagram ones, what I find most often that I experience in the leadership spaces or the workspace is when they feel that like tension come up or that questioning energy of like, oh, I don't know if they think I'm, of course, right? Who knows if they believe that what I'm saying is true. So I think there's a couple of things. I think that they question, do they trust what I'm saying? And do they believe that what I'm saying is right? And often what can happen is that Enneagram 1 structure can really take over to where they want to refine, they want to over explain, they want you to hear, trust, and believe that what they're saying is not just correct, but it's also precise. So they tighten their variables too. So they like really like lock down all of the reasons. Like they will literally bullet point you out, probably already have an outline just in case this occurred, by the way, to help you really see that what they're saying is actually true. I also see them immediately try to step in and correct or fix something that is off within their team dynamics because they don't want that wrongness to be that destabilizing energy within the team. So rather than kind of allowing their teams to solution on their own or take their time to process through the incorrect info, they step in immediately. They're very efficient, right? So, like, they want to take care of this thing right now. They don't want it to linger and hang out and wait. They also will critique and not even realize it. So if one word is off, sometimes I see that, unbalanced Enneagram 1 correcting the one word or the one item. So they'll critique without necessarily seeing it as criticizing other individuals. They're really refining the info and they're helping, right? They're helping us be more accurate. So I see that happen a lot, but when the Enneagram 1, I think what's really important with this, and this is going to be true for all Ennea types, it's never the absence of the trigger, right? Like the trigger or that, like, I can tell something is off in the room, that's going to still be felt. But when you're really balanced within yourself, you're not going to lean into as much of that, let me correct or overcorrect. So when somebody says the same thing, like let's just say the statement was, this could be structured better. That would probably be a triggering statement to an Enneagram 1. Rather than immediately trying to justify or spell out why their response was structured perfectly, right? They'll lean into more of that energy of walk me through what you'd adjust. So they stayed grounded within that rather than tightening the like only my way is the correct way energy. They leave the responsibility back on the person that is questioning them, which I think is something else that Enneagram ones have a hard time with. Like they love being over responsible for everything. So releasing that control and letting the other party who's actually doing the questioning explain why they question it rather than feeling like the Enneagram 1 has to be the individual that explains and really structures it all together.
Look, I don't know if we really love being over responsible. I feel like it's one of those areas that is just a trap. I was like, I don't want to be here, and here I am again. And I don't want to be here, but yet here I am again. One of the other things that I mean, all of this was spot on, right? Like I'm smirking and cringing kind of all at the same time as you talk about it. But when you talked about, questioning, do they believe what I'm saying or do they think what I'm saying is right? And it's been so interesting to tune into that in my own inner space and see where it creeps in. And actually, it was one of the hardest things when we started collaborating together for me to shut out of my mind during a presentation or a container or a radio show. And I'm like, sometimes looking at your facial reaction and I'm like, is that to me? Like, what is she, does she not, does she totally disagree with what I say? Like we disagree all the time, right? So why does that even matter? But in the moment, it is this patterning and programming that just rapid fires through our head. And it certainly is that inner hidden boss that I am not standing in my power when I'm listening to that inside of myself. And the other thing with the one that I feel like might be the only thing to add to what she said, because it was so accurate, is we have such an uncanny habit to scan for what isn't working. And we'll do that before we acknowledge what is working. And so oftentimes, like the criticism or critical feedback that you mentioned, it comes from the space of, well, really, all I can see in front of me is just this one little tiny thing that's wrong, but then that's all I focus on. And so all of the positivity, all of the momentum of the people that you're leading, you can inadvertently like squash that in like 2 seconds flat. And so I was actually just talking to someone today, probably why this is coming up, right? And I'm like, oh, there's this part of my leadership that I really am focused on right now. And I don't want it to be like steamrolling over people's progress or the momentum that they're making because there is still another area to nurture. Like there's always an area to nurture, right? But let's find the rhythm and cadence that supports doing that versus just having that innate focus that goes directly there. Did you have anything else you wanted to share? When I jumped in here, I wasn't sure if you were completely complete, but I'm like, yeah, it's all bottling up.
No, I think it's true. Like, I think all of that really does cover like the enormity of an Enneagram one, but whether they like the responsibility or not, they definitely lean into that over responsibility. So just giving the space to allow somebody else to be responsible for their reaction rather than feeling like you need to mitigate it or respond to it immediately, I think is definitely a growth edge for the Enneagram ones to just kind of sit back and let the other person, what no matter what the other person's Enneatype is, let them explain why they had the reaction as well. So I just think that's part of the growth edge of the one.
Yes. And if you are not leaning into your growth edges, what is your effect going to be? Let's nail this down really quick before we move on. What you're going to develop is people around you who perform, and they're not actually going to expand their skills. They're just going to rise to the occasion for that occasion, probably have a lot of resentment and other ill feelings on the inside. And then those results are going to diminish because it was all just an performance. It wasn't an expansion into actually being able to um, conduct themselves at that level. Like it's not a standard. That's what I'm trying to get at. All right. So moving along to type two, which is a heart point, our helpers. Oh, our helpers, you think that your leadership is your care for people. I bet you've never heard us say that before. Like the twos are all about helping. I was actually working with a client today who was talking about if they're not helping, they have no purpose. And I'm like, yes, I'm aware. But the blind spot for the type two is also their over involvement. So it's not just ones who are the overachievers, but the way that overachieving, over responsible, sorry, type one over responsible, type two, the way the over involvement is more in regulating other people, tuning into how other people are feeling. And really, if you can intercede before people struggle, you will because you're anticipating the needs of other people before they're expressed. And sometimes we need a little challenge, we need a little pressure to expand our skills. And if we're interceding, sometimes it actually creates enabling in the workplace more often than not. I know, SJ, you and I have had some different conversations about when we release the reins on certain things, or we just decide we don't have space to juggle the 28,000 balls, whatever the day brought our way. It is so incredible how people will find the solutions and the answers. And this is a place where the Enneagram 2 can really lean into that growth edge of not interceding and letting people find those answers. So, what you perceive to be support is that enabling vibe. because underneath that of your driving factor is a need to be needed. And so, what is your effect that you're creating? You're actually creating a team or the people that you're leading to become dependent upon you. And you're also going to have the effect of building a lot of quiet resentment within yourself because you're never going to have the space that you need at the same time either.
Yeah, the other thing too that I see with the Enneagram twos a lot is that when people withdraw from them, no matter what space it is in, leadership, personal, whatever, they push harder. Like they lean in more and they kind of hit that like stage five clinger vibe sometimes when they're stressed out of like, I'll just reach out to them more. I'll add more to like what I can do for them. I'll show them that I'm here. Like I'm going to call them 50 times in a row. I'm going to text them. I'm going to Teams message them. So rather than just allowing people to stumble, fall, figure it out on their own, the two leans into that like, you have to talk to me vibe, which a lot of the Enneatypes that's going to push away even further. So you're actually going to get the exact opposite result as you're looking for within the leadership dynamic, especially. So I think the two's growth edge is allowing awkwardness and allowing space. Like just let it be awkward, let people be interesting, we'll call it, in those spaces of silence. I see the Enneagram 2 leaders in the workspace really want to fill the silence, the awkward silences. Like they want to step in so that people don't feel called out, don't feel odd, don't feel like, oh my God, this like 2 seconds of silence was horrible. So when they lean into their growth edge, though, really just sitting in that, I want your input and I'll wait for it, and just leaving it at that is probably going to be a huge growth edge for an Enneagram 2 rather than trying to fill it with options, because I see that a lot with the Enneagram 2 leaders of here are some options that you could consider, or here's some helpful places that we could look and see if it's here. Like rather than trying to solve and to solve the awkward silences, just allowing that space of awkwardness, I think is a huge growth edge for the Enneagram 2 leaders.
You always have what it is you're trying to avoid, though, also, right? Because I see an Enneagram 2 in the workplace who's so sweet, so helping, so gentle, so kind. I really only have positive things to say about her, but what I observe happen is this awkward laughter to soften if like there's something being addressed in the
Mhm.
workplace, especially my contact is most often in group settings, meetings.
Mhm.
And at first I thought, oh, that's kind of nice. It like cuts the tension. I think that a well-timed laughter can be a great levity to a room, but when it's always the go-to for to fill every awkward moment, then it becomes awkward itself.
Mhm.
And it's missing the mark.
Yeah. So also just leaning into that, like, hey, I'm here when you're ready to have this conversation, and literally just leaving it at that and not waiting for it, just leaving it in the other person's ballpark. I mean, probably document whether they respond or not, right? If we're in leadership roles, documentation is likely important. And I think that is one area that the twos don't like to do that, right? I think the Enneagram 2 is amazing at documenting good things and things that we want people to see, but they'll let people slide quite a bit on the less desirable items. Like they'll let it go for a really long time before you push them over their edge of really confronting the problem areas too. So really leaning into that balance of both are important and not taking on the responsibility of if I document this, then the other person's success is or failure is also my fault because I could have helped them more. You have to let go of some of that I could have helped more and let them really just lean into the they chose what they chose energy. Moving into the Enneagram 3, which I feel like is a very different vibe than the Enneagram 1 and the 2, and what we see in this hidden boss energy. The Enneagram 3s that I see when someone questions their idea, They like to elevate instantly. So, more polish, more articulation, bigger words, fancier, more elaborate displays. Whenever they sense doubt, they seem to upgrade their delivery mid-sentence. So all of a sudden, we're saying things like hubris and a mopapopatapopatous that I don't even know that. I don't think that's a word. But I don't know what half the words are that Enneagram threes use either when they are triggered or in that space of feeling like they are questioned. So they shift their personality and their delivery based on what they perceive the audience to be thinking or feeling about what they're saying. So it's just a lot more fanfare, it feels like, when they are triggered versus, that same trigger, challenge to their point, challenge to their authority, their response, if it's more integrated, would be, that's a fair point, but my direction still stands. So rather than over explaining through smoke and mirrors and kind of that very acting point, they can just allow their decision to stand rather than feeling like they have to defend it with a show.
Hmm. Yeah, the threes, their growth edge is really learning to not override the body from an internal standpoint when they're, pushing, executing, delivering, disconnecting from their own limits as well as from the people around them in a way, just to maintain the image of success. Because of course, it seems like you're creating results on the outside. But if you don't look at the cause underneath that, you're not going to see that performance is what is happening over your true actual presence. And when you can lead people through presence to truly come into their own power and execute from their alignment and desire and drive, you're going to have a completely different cause. So while your cause is just from your patterned programming to achieve, yes, you may win externally, but you are certainly going to slowly deplete yourself internally. And it also will deplete, erode, ripple into the relationships of the people around you. Because that image, people will see that. People will see, I'm not sure if I can trust this individual. I'm not sure what version I'm going to get in the moment of pressure. And so it's that outcome relationship conversation we have in the relationship plays second fiddle, if you will, to the outcome. And so the power for the achiever, the effect that you want to have is really to blend those two so that you're listening to your own cues and honoring them, and then also really being authentic with the people around you and leading from truth. So, our four, the individualist. The individualist is very deep individual, but the blind spot can be identification. And so you don't just feel emotions, you become them. And then the lines get blurred between your identity and whether your identity is what you're feeling in the moment, or if you really truly soundly know who you are, what you represent, what your truth is, bringing yourself back to your values in the moments of emotions rather than escaping the fact that you once knew what your values were, and you will certainly know what your values are again after the emotional tornado. I'm laughing because I for sure have experienced this a time or 12 when I spin out, because this is my stress point. Those values will come right back, but in the in between, it's just all emotion, and you're riding the emotional wave. So you think you may be honoring your truth, but your whole truth is not just your feeling state of your inner world. And so the cause that's happening here from your default programming is over identifying with those emotions and internal state. And the effect that happens are, the mood swings that people witness, the inconsistency, and leadership where the people who you're leading have a really hard time stabilizing around it because they don't know what to expect either from this emotional standpoint.
Yeah, a couple of things that I don't have a lot to necessarily add to this, but a couple of things that I see with the Enneagram 4 leaders is that they really lean into if there is a change that they determine feels significant, they assume that the rest of the team also feels that it is significant, and they have to share that significance in this emotional upheaval. And it's not typically elated emotions that we are feeling in upheaval. So sometimes they can really spread the emotional stress to the rest of the team when a lot of the Enneatypes that are on their team probably didn't even code this as this should be a stressful situation. It was just change. For instance, a 7 would be like, I don't give a shit. It's just whatever. Cool. Sounds like a new adventure. Versus when they experience the Enneagram 4 leader in the heaviness of their emotions, the 7 immediately is moving into, and other Enneatypes as well, are going to move into, oh my God, what's the logic behind this that I'm missing? What is the bad thing that's coming? Like, I feel like the 6s are going to really lean into, like, what is the risk that we're not seeing within this too? So sometimes you can really spread, when you're in that imbalanced state, emotional upheaval that maybe isn't really there for the other Enneatypes, even if you feel the intensity of it. And then the other item I just wanted to touch with the Enneagram 4 leaders is that often I have seen when other Enneatypes disagree with their perspective or their idea, even worse, their ideas, they internalize that as a personal problem, or a personal, something personal about them, rather than it being information about the project or the idea. So they can internalize a lot of that info and make it personal rather than just allowing it to be feedback about the project or the idea and having nothing to do with them personally. I love, though, when I see Enneagram types 4s, when they lean into that growth edge, is when they simply say something just as simple as, it may not resonate for you, but it still stands as a decision for me. And just having that finality of, this is the truth and this is the direction, regardless of trying to get the other individual to understand or feel the same way that they do about it. Moving into the Enneagram 5s. I see disengagement most with Enneagram 5s when they feel like somebody disagrees with them. And oftentimes I've seen them move away from the delivery entirely to where they want to go research more. They want to make sure that everything they thought to be true really does have a logical basis behind it. And the other thing that I see when an Enneagram 5 leader is overstimulated by the amount of feedback or people in general is they shut down participation. So they will just say, I'm done. Like, there is no more talk about this. I don't even want to hear what the possible other items could or concerns could be. So they really close the door of access entirely to them when they feel that challenge from the audience. Um, and I think their growth edge is really just the simple, when they feel that challenge from the group, is just, here's what I know right now, and being okay in the, I made a decision based off of the information I have right now. And that's what we have to go off of, rather than needing to know every single aspect of what maybe could be there, maybe isn't there. Just leaning into, this is the info I have right now, and that's why I shared what I shared. So they can really stay present while still processing any new info that might come in.
It's interesting. I have had a plethora of 5s show up kind of in the exact opposite in a way. And the
Mhm.
withdrawing, withholding, all of that is very, very much Enneagram 5. The thing I see with them, though, is when they're so convicted about what they think in a decision, in the rationale behind the decision, it will be a switch that gets flipped straight into debate mode. And we don't have to debate this. And the force that can come with the debate and that energy that there is like, I am right about this and there is no other option will have the effect of completely the missed impact because people don't actively listen and truly hear to understand when people are in that delivery. It's just psychology and human nature. Like, I'm not gonna dumb it down or dull it down, I mean, but yeah, the harder that you come at people because you're so certain of your certainty, the more it's the magnet. The more you push, the more people repel. And the effect that you have is completely missing the opportunity for impact with the incredible wisdom and knowledge that is there to be offered. It just, the delivery misses the mark. So moving on to type six, the loyalist. You think your leadership is your preparedness, of course, because you've looked for everything that could possibly go wrong and have a contingency plan for it. But the blind spot that you're overlooking is the doubt, because all of the scanning for what could go wrong and the contingency planning and the questioning and the double checking just builds this cloud of doubt around not only you, but the people that you're leading. And so you may think that you're creating safety by having all of that planning done ahead of time. But what you've done along the way is create internal uncertainty for yourself. And that doubt can creep in of, am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing something else? Maybe I should ask several other people what they should do in this scenario. We've talked all about the Enneagram six's propensity to pull their peers. So if you don't keep your own certainty in check as you plan, then really check in and see, is this something that I actually need to be planning for? Or if I'm making this decision and I am calibrating my compass to go in this one direction, what is actually in front of me in that direction, not every other direction around me that could possibly, like, you'd have to pivot first to get into a lot of those scenarios that you're planning for. So the effect that you have that is certainly not what you are intending for is the indecision and the second guessing and a team that truly feels your hesitation and becomes hesitant themselves.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add to this Enneagram 6. That was very thorough and precise, of course. The only thing that I really would add is that oftentimes I see Enneagram 6 leaders task different people with the same task because then they want those people to come back with what they're going to come back with as the deliverable. And then they can kind of pick and choose which pieces of this do I like. And also, what risks did person A find that B didn't find, that C didn't find, that D didn't find? And that's all fine and well until A, B, and C and D human realize they were all tasked with the same thing. And then they can become a little bit annoyed with the why are we all doing the same thing, but we weren't brought in together to know we're having a group effort right now, which can cause a whole lot of abandonment, which is exactly what the Enneagram 6 doesn't want, right? Because then everybody's just mad and then they're half putting effort into this because, I mean, if Todd's going to do it, then Sally's for sure not doing it now. So I see that sometimes with Enneagram sixes, where just be very thoughtful about your taskings. And if you're going to task more than one person with the same item, letting them know that you are having them both work on this so that it can be a collaborative effort will really actually help build trust within your team rather than feeling like I kind of feel lied to because she should have just told me that, she was having Todd look at it as well. That's the only thing that I would add is just really build that trust by being honest about the fact that you want to have more opinions and input into this. So letting the team know. And then also, I think the growth edge for an Enneagram 6 is allowing other people to assume the risk rather than feeling like they had to assess all of it. Let the people know that when you're tasking them, that you want them to discern what the risks are and bring that back to you. Moving on to our Enneagram sevens. I'm not going to talk a lot about the seven. I want to hear what Janessa has to say about the seven, but I will say when an Enneagram seven, speaking as one for myself, is triggered or feels questioned, their inner boss loves to just, see who hits harder. And not just who hits harder, but who can hit harder the quickest with wit and verbal sparring, preferably. Maybe fists out back too. Who knows? Depends on the genre of, work that you do, probably. But they will immediately lean into that combative, let me just be like, if you're going to question me, then let's go through what you know right now, like on the spot, on the fly. No other thoughts. Do you get to have where you have time to think about it or put together? Like, let's just talk about right now why you're clearly incorrect, because of course I have thought about all of the things. That is one area that I think an Enneagram 7 can really destroy themselves and their team by letting that inner voice take hold. And the other way is like the quite the opposite, where they just avoid the problem entirely. They're dismissive. They will act like it's, oh, whatever, we'll figure it out on the fly when we get there. I feel like that. I say that all the time, all by the way, too. So any of my team that's listening, sorry about that. But yeah, I really love that we'll figure it out if and when we cross that bridge. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of deflection that happens with Enneagram 6 bosses as well. Sevens, not sixes,
Seven.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I definitely plan to focus on the avoidance. But I don't think the avoidance is simply just avoiding we talk a lot with the Enneagram 7 because they're the enthusiast, of course, and they're so optimistic, how they're avoiding the discomfort and the heaviness, right? This is true. Even mentioned it in the intro, but sevens will also avoid preparing for things. They'll avoid bringing things to completion. They will rely heavily on their pivot. They will avoid also, correct me if I'm wrong, SJ, but to a certain extent, I see often where the Enneagram 7 will completely avoid ownership or seeing the impact of the pivot has on the people around them and will lead from a place of just expecting other people with very different internal programming to keep up with all of the pivots.
Mhm.
And so they can really kind of avoid the relationship aspect of leadership and will stay so focused on outcome
Mhm.
that the other details that go into creating the outcome will get avoided along the way. Their ability to problem solve, think on the fly, speak on the fly, like these things cannot be understated by any means. But when overutilized, like anything else, positive things become challenges. So the effect that they have really is a team that feels inspired but not supported at
Mhm.
the end of the day. So moving into the challenger type 8. Anything else you want to add to the 7 though before we move on since you are a living, walking, talking expert of the Enneagram 7?
No, I think that's true. The only thing that I would add is that we are really bad at hearing people out when there's not logical examples and they just say, like, I feel like I don't know what to do with this. Well, I don't know what you want me to do with that feeling because I don't even know what that feeling is. So I think we just the avoidance aspect for us is the avoidance of the feelings and the emotions of our team if our team can't articulate to us why it is a problem in logical reasons, rather than just taking ownership of the fact that we are the logical reason that they feel that way, because we are fine with 27 pivots and changes in directions, but that can feel very destabilizing to probably most of the Enneatypes. So I think the 7 likes to shift blame away from themselves when honestly, we are the root cause of our problems. And we could just take that ownership and acknowledge that even up front in our pivot of, hey, I understand how this probably feels super destabilizing and terrible. Really sorry about that. And I'm going to try to do better. right? Like I'm going to try to be better at figuring the stuff out in the beginning. But I think just taking the responsibility for the fact that we are typically the destabilizing aspect of our team.
I always appreciate when the seven will tell me the why for the need for the pivot, and that can help the destabilizing aspect because you can see the bigger picture versus getting caught up in the what can seem like whiplash sometimes.
Yes.
Moving on to the type 8, the challenger.
Not the whiplash.
Not the whiplash. So the eights, your leadership, you believe is your strength, but your blind spot is the force in which you carry out the strength that you do have. So you will take charge and you are going to move fast and you protect and you will delegate and you have this natural authoritative essence about you that makes you a strong leader, but you will push before you listen and you will push hard. And you do that believing that you're creating momentum and good things are happening because of that. But the real driving force that is the cause behind that action is that you stay in control. So even when you delegate, you are controlling who is doing what, and you have some level of faith in the person that is getting the delegated task. Like things all point back to control around the Enneagram 8. And the effect that this creates for your team or the people that you're leading is compliance. So people will comply with you because they're not going to want to bump up against that force and take on that battle or quite commonly get power overed if you are familiar with power dynamics. So they'll comply with you, but they're not going to open up to you and they're not going to have a real conversation with you about a better approach, ideas that they have, um, outside the box thinking, their own skills and talents that they're bringing to the scenario that are unique and authentic to them. And so you really don't allow for that puzzle piece dynamic to click into place where everyone's best traits are getting utilized. You're just going to do what you appoint and what you see, and your blind spots will remain your blind spots because people are not going to come alongside of you to help you out with those blind spots.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, Jessica covered that amazingly with the control aspect. I want to go a little bit in a different direction, though, with what can happen when the Enneagram 8 leans into that really heavy control. They make all of the decisions, everything has to flow through them. Some of the Enneatypes that I see in the workplace that are working for an Enneagram 8, and I will call myself out, but sevens and threes will look for ways to undermine you in return. Absolutely. Like we will look for ways to allow you your point of control and we will figure out how to go around you. So you'll have a loss of information available because we just won't share. We won't share anything more than what you ask of us, nothing further, and we'll just keep moving forward without necessarily telling the Enneagram 8 leader what direction we have chosen. And we will lean into asking for forgiveness rather than permission, which creates an entire lack of control, right? Which is what the 8 is probably seeking, is a controlled environment and decisions. So just understanding too that you do create dynamics where not just everybody is going to lean into doing what you ask, that compliance aspect, but there are certain Enneatypes that will do the exact opposite to see what they can get around you as well. Not the greatest balance on either side of that table, but those are just some of those dynamics that can be created when you don't allow the space for people to feel heard. Moving into our Enneagram nines, the peacemakers. I feel like Enneagram 9 leaders get caught in the sure, like you have different thoughts. We can revisit that and revisit it and revisit it and revisit it 5 million times over and keep revisiting it rather than just making a decision and standing on the decision. They almost do the exact opposite of what the Enneagram 8 and even the 7 leaders will do, to where they let people talk in circles and keep looping back. They want to create that space where there's no conflict, but also people feel included and like they have a voice. The Enneagram 9 leaders for me that I've seen can get caught up in believing that everybody deserves a seat at the decision-making table, when sometimes you do just have to say, like, "Hey, thank you for your thoughts and concerns and feelings, and this is the decision still. I'm still going to stand on that," rather than kind of shopping around like the 6 does of, "Does anybody have any concerns with this?" I see the 9s get caught in some of those same traps that the Enneagram 6 leaders do, to where for me, the growth edge of the 9 is just a simple statement of, "I hear your perspective, and we're still moving forward with this delivery. Like, we're still gonna move forward. I heard you, and this is the decision." So being very clear of, "Thank you, heard, and this is the actual decision."
Yeah, the nines are all about, creating harmony. And so while your multitude of approaches, seeing both sides of a situation, it all comes down to the cause underneath your actions are to avoid the conflict and also self-assertion, right? Because you have to own those decisions, like SJ was giving that example. Owning decisions can be really uncomfortable for a personality type that doesn't like to make a decision in the first place. And the effect of that will breed stagnation within the people that you're leading. It will cause you to have a lack of direction when direction is really, really needed. And also, when we talk about leading a room, your voice is going to get drowned out in a room when you're not asserting yourself. So the growth edge for the nines for sure are about showing up and speaking out and not being afraid that someone might disagree with you. And the fact that there are a whole lot of humans out here that can disagree with you and it not be conflict. Like it's okay to have differing perspectives and differing suggestions or ways to lead, manage, and to move in a workplace. Is there anything else you want to add to this topic before we move to wrapping up the show?
No, I think we've covered it pretty well.
Yeah, we have really pulled apart and looked at the different causes that each of us have in our leadership style and the effect that results from those actions that we take, and how the effect that we're getting can be kind of painful rather than the effect that we truly want to have. And so, what can happen is I literally just had this happen to me last week where I actually wanted to reward my team and I was asked a question. And the response that I gave was just in the moment. I was on my way out the door. It was the end of my week. And it was just so Enneagram 1 efficient and to the point that my effect was not what I wanted. And then I realized my next, purpose of cause here is to figure out how to follow up and loop back around to that so that the truth and the heart that I was really bringing to that situation will be both seen and felt by my staff. And these like mishaps that we have that happen so quick in the moment, it's not something that strategy, that better time management, that clearer communication or more discipline, those things aren't going to actually develop you into being that leader that you desire to be because your results are not going to be created from strategy alone. They're created from your state. And I unfortunately learn on more than one occasion that my state of being rushed or being done, like SJ has said before on here, when any of the ones are done, they're done, is not the state from which my strongest leadership skills are exuded. For others, for you, it might be your tone or your pace or your energy or your presence or your emotion, but underneath it all, that is the cause. And your cause, it's not random. It is completely patterned in you, through you, in your Enneagram, in your personality. It is stored in your body. You embody it and it's repeated in your leadership. whether you're consciously aware of it or not, or whether you become aware of it after the fact, which is a little bit too late. So, in this show, we walk through how each type subtly overleads or underowns those patterns and their effect. And your body, when you tune into it, will really tell you the truth before your mind can explain it. We also talked about how high capacity leaders, you're not lacking effort. You're just simply misidentifying the cause and you're trying to solve for outcomes while the pattern creating them, it stays unidentified, untouched, unconscious. And so you just keep repeating the same pattern and the same outcome. And it gets really frustrating. And so when you become regulated, when you become conscious, when you have clarity, when you have steadiness, when you have precision, when you have interrupted patterns, you're the same leader in a different state with completely different results. And this is the work. It's not about doing more or pushing harder. It's just really honing in on being precise about what you're actually creating and what you're actually experiencing. So, if you're honest with yourself, I'm sure you'll see that you too don't need another strategy. You just need to see clearly and honestly what's driving you this whole entire time. You need to see that pattern behind the cause that you couldn't quite identify. You need to see the effect for what it really is and not what you wanted it to be or what your intention was. You need to see the way that you step in or pull back, that you speed up or you take on more, and how you do it all automatically. Because that's the level of leadership that is actually creating success. And it's also the level a lot of people never address. But you are capable. You are capable of shifting these patterns, but not through awareness alone. You shift them through the interruption and the embodiment, the things that we talk about all the time on the show with the real time calibration. And that's exactly what happens within the Stronger Together space. It is where you learn how to catch the pattern while it's happening, not after the fact. It's where you are able to learn how to regulate your body so your leadership is steady instead of reactive in the moment. It's the space where you know exactly where you are at cause and where you cleanly are at effect, where you stop over owning what isn't yours without disconnecting from your standards because those standards and values really matter. And you get to bring your A game from a place of alignment rather than depletion and do so unapologetically. Our goal is not about doing less, it's to stop leading from patterns that were never meant to run the show or run the room. And that allows you to lead from clarity. So, if something in this episode made you pause, if you felt that moment of, oh, that's exactly what I do, if you sat there and smirked or giggled like I did as your type was explained, that's awesome because your awareness is coming online. And now it's time to take the next step to do something with it. So come join us inside of Stronger Together because the women who are rising right now are not the ones doing more. They're the ones willing to lead from the level of cause intentionally. And you can join us in Stronger Together by visiting www.strongertogetherinstitute.com. You can grab your seat there. Our next call is Thursday, where we are going to unravel even more patterns of cause to bring about the effects that you have truly been busting your butt to create. And we can't wait to see you there. And we will be back here the second Wednesday of May. And until then,